We love Zencaster because it allows us to record the audio for our podcast and create the video segments we use for our weekly Sister Scoop episodes. Zencaster has helped us make content capture simple.
It's now super easy to record a podcast with Zencaster. Log in using your browser and start recording a high-quality podcast right away. Record studio quality sound and up to 4K video with your guests, and feel a sense of zen knowing Zencaster's multi-layered backups ensure you always have your recordings in the highest quality, even if the connection is unstable.
If you've thought about podcasting before and realized that you need a lot of different tools and services, those days are over. With Zencaster's all-in-one podcasting platform, you can create your podcast in one place and distribute it to Spotify, Apple, and other major destinations.
Just go to zencastr.com/pricing and use our code SistersAssembled, and you'll get 30% off your first month of any Zencaster paid plan. We want you to have the same easy experiences we do for all of our podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story.
Katie and I are always hungry, and one snack we both love is beef jerky. That's why we're so excited to tell you about one of our favorite jerky brands, Matt Hat Jerky.
Matt Hat's delicious taste makes it a great snack, and the variety of flavors, including original, black truffle, and my personal favorite, roasted garlic, means there's a flavor for everyone. Plus, it's local to the area where we grew up in, which we just love.
Use the link in the show notes below to get some Matt Hat Jerky for yourself, and make sure to use our coupon code SistersAssembled for 10% off. Hello and welcome to Sisters Assembled, your home for all things MCU. And in case you weren't keeping track of dates, it's here, folks. X-Men 97 Season 2 is coming out in just a couple of days. So as we do with all or most Marvel properties, we will be doing our Season 2 predictions today. Basically talking about what we think is going to happen in this season, though I mean, it's going to be crazy, so who knows? With that being said, Katie, get us started.
I don't want to. Okay, obviously you guys know I'm extremely excited for season 2. I have been waiting for it for 2 years. I am dressed to the occasion, got my X-Men 97 shirt on. I'm excited, obviously, as a whole. I'm not excited to have to think about what's coming for 2 reasons. One, I feel like there's a lot coming. I just feel like there's a lot. And 2, this is the type of show that it's really hard to predict because it doesn't follow just one storyline throughout the entire show.
And nor are we in one time period.
No, and we'll get to that. I didn't want to get to that yet, but we'll get to that. But yeah, I think it's hard because, I mean, I am coming off of rewatching season 1, as I know T is as well. And the thing about that is, it reminded me how we start so far away from where we end.
Yeah.
It's not a bad thing because, I mean, a lot of the times, like, things, you know, are still through lines and whatever, and you're still following stories throughout, like, the whole of the 10 episodes. But where we truly end the season is absolutely so far from where we start the season.
Yeah.
And that is what makes it really hard to kind of sit here and be like, what do we expect in season 2? Because I'm not really sure. Obviously, you know, we've set up for quite literally, and okay, I mean it when I say this. I'm not following necessarily the comic when I say it, but the Age of Apocalypse, right? Like, we are setting up to enter 3 different versions of Apocalypse in 3 different timelines.
Yeah.
With 3 different teams.
Yeah. Plus all of the other teams that, you know, are there in the X-Men's absence.
Right. Yeah. And that's what we know, right? Off the basis. I mean, I have, from a base level prediction, I've left hanging since the end of season 2, which the Horsemen are coming.
Yes.
You know, the 4 Horsemen of Apocalypse. Gambit's going to be one of them. If that doesn't happen, I'm suing. Point blank period. Like, I don't care. You don't get to kill off my man halfway through season 1 and then decide to not follow the storyline that brings him back with a lot of trauma, but brings him back. Like, I think that's the only thing I can confidently sit there and say, yeah, that's what I expect to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know where to begin. Like, I'm gonna be so honest with y'all. Like, I was watching season 1, giggling, crying, having the best time, having the worst time,
Correct.
thinking about how much I love this show and how it's so good and how I'm so excited. And then, it ends and I was like, wow, there's so much like time travel, which y'all know is like not my personal cup of tea in terms of storytelling mechanism. But I was like, in X-Men 97 we trust. Like if anybody's gonna nail time travel, it'll be these guys.
Correct.
So I was like, okay, this is gonna be great. Then I started doing my research and I was researching the Gambit Horseman storyline. I was like, okay, we got that unlocked. That feels like a pretty big given, especially when you look at some of the titles that I know people have been speculating what one of the titles later in the season might be hinting at. I cannot believe they're going to make us wait potentially that long into the season for that. I saw that and I was like, oh, Katie's going to have some thoughts on that timing. But then I was watching the trailers and I was like, okay, so we see lots of mutants. Like we got a lot of cameos, I think, in season 1, more so than I remembered. Like beyond, the Avengers and the Fantastic Four, which were obvious, we got a lot of mutant cameos as well that I forgot about. But we're gonna see, I think, a lot more characters get more airtime than just the kind of core X-Men group that we've been following. I know we added Bishop in last season, I think more consistently, and then obviously Forge as well. But I think even, someone like a Psylocke or Polaris she had a small cameo in season 1. Like those characters seem like they're gonna have kind of more larger parts. I think even Emma Frost, who we saw survive the attack on Genosha. So I think one of the things that I'm really looking forward to is kind of expanding my knowledge and lore beyond kind of the X-Men core team that we've been following, both in the original series and then in season 1.
Yeah, and I think some of that also comes down to the time periods that we're in.
Mm-hmm.
Because one of them is pretty much the origin of Apocalypse.
Yeah.
So we're going back to it's like Egypt,
Yeah.
like we're
Sabanor. I was like, oh
yeah, like we're going back. And then obviously I know there's like kind of that future part as well, that's a whole thing. So like some of this is not even going to just be mutants that we might be super aware of in the current time, although that is going to be something that is going to obviously play a part as well. But we have, who is it, Bishop and why am I blanking, who's the other one still in current time?
Forge.
Okay, yes, it was those two. I was like, it's not one of the original team.
Jubilee and Sunspot are also still in the 90s as well, because remember he flew her back off the asteroid at the end, and then they landed with Forge when all of the rest of the X-Men went missing. So we have those 4 that we know are still hanging out in the 90s.
Right. So we have those 3 timelines to kind of play with.
Right.
So we have a lot of options, we have a lot of characters that we are going to see, we are going to bring in, and to your point, are going to play bigger parts than they maybe, if they were in season 1, than they were before. So it'll be fun to see. What I kind of want to touch on, though, and I don't want to digress too far from the mutants, but it's kind of that idea is, obviously season 1 really focused on what we know the most with the mutants, which is kind of fitting in with humanity. That ongoing struggle. I mean, at the core, that is Magneto and Xavier's like tiff, if you will, is that they don't agree with how to handle that relationship with the humans.
Right.
And that is really one of the biggest storylines that exists for the mutants. The Sentinels, all of that stuff. We saw that come to an even bigger battle on an even bigger head, and I'm not even sure that's the last one we'll ever see. So, and it was major in the way that it played out. So, to top that would shock me. But, we saw that all in season 1. That was still the primary focus and the story being told. Obviously, we know, as I said, this is going to be Apocalypse. We have a lot of mutants still that are going to be involved in this. Where do we go here, though, with the 3 different timelines that we're playing with?
Yeah, I think it's so interesting. So let's go in, I guess, what you would consider, this makes sense, chronological order. So starting with the folks who are in Egypt, which, correct me if I'm wrong, but let's just like list those for anybody who hasn't rewatched yet and or is not planning on rewatching, which please do, because it holds up 2 years later.
Yeah, it's just
you will laugh, you will cry, have a good time.
Yeah.
But we've got Professor X, we've got Magneto, Rogue, Nightcrawler. So we've got that set in ancient Egypt. they see at the end of the season, we see them supposedly seem to have saved. Oh, and Beast, I believe, is there as well. And they seem to have saved En Sabah, who goes on to become Apocalypse, right? So
Rhodey out here with his
yeah.
theory is coming back. That's all I gotta say.
And so I think that's going to be interesting because it's, again, like, it's almost like, how do you stop him before he gets to that point? I think we'll see an interesting tension between Magneto and Charles. It kind of like what you were saying, they approach problems so differently. So Magneto is always like, force first, you have wronged me, and now you shall be wronged. And Charles is always approaching things with an era of, or like, aura, that's the word I'm looking for, aura of mercy, of redemption. So I think we're going to see this interesting kind of choice that they have to make between Magneto's, like, to your point, maybe we just kill him, and like, this changes things. I don't know how they're going to play with timelines in terms of like, does that create a branch timeline or does that affect the future?
Well, I wonder if that's, I don't want to do this.
I never want to do this.
But
so
I do wonder if we kind of sort of have to go down that road for a hot second just to consider, that might be part of this debate too. I think we may be oversimplifying it when it comes to Apocalypse. I actually think the bigger debate is how much they alter or do not alter. We can't forget that Bishop is a time traveler himself. And we've gone to other times. If you guys haven't watched the OG X-Men part of this, series that came out in the 90s, we've been in and out of all sorts of different times. We've got Cable being in and out of different times. We have two time travelers who like to appear and spend some time in our timeline and then go and do their thing, and then we go visit them and all that stuff. That being said, I do almost wonder part of the debate ends up being how much you play with time and how much it plays back more than Apocalypse.
Not to jump time periods here, but an interesting kind of wrinkle in the time, travel discussion of it all. In the future, we know that Jean and Scott are, and there's someone else with them, and I literally watched this yesterday and I cannot remember. And that's terrible.
Me remembering is Rogue with them?
No, Rogue is in Egypt. Maybe it's...
Did you name Rogue when you said that, though?
I'm fairly certain I did, because she attacks people and Nightcrawler helps her, and I do remember that because brother and sister are together. So that I remembered. Maybe it's... No, you know what? Is Wolverine still in the 90s? I think he might be.
No. Wait, yeah, because he got... Yes, because...
He got... Yep. With the arm,
Magneto
skeleton.
Took out a skeleton.
Yeah, and then Morph was with him.
Yeah, I was going to say Morph stayed back.
So they might still be in the 90s.
Why am I acting like I didn't just watch this show?
I know, I literally watched this yesterday.
It's really so hard when the teams start to divide, though. Like, I really...
Well, and so honestly, much happens so quickly that it's like, what?
When all you're worried about, at least from my personal perspective, is Gambit, I'm really not thinking too much about everybody else. I'm kind of like, how do we get my man back? That's all I want.
I think it was like overwhelm for me. I was like, oh my gosh, time travel. And I knew it was coming. Like, it's obviously not my first time watching it, but whatever. Either way, back to the time travel conversation. But in the future, Jean and Scott meet up with Clan Ascani, which is who helps, basically raise Nathan. And Clan Ascani is actually a huge protector of the sacred timeline. So they time travel in order to protect the sacred timeline in the comics. With that being said, that kind of then has something to do with like how everyone approaches time travel. That's not to say that the folks in Egypt will approach it the same way that Clan Ascani does, but we know kind of the methodology of the folks in the future and how they approach time travel and the option to change certain things.
Well, and I do think that's where that plays that part of like the bigger debate is the time itself and not so much actually Apocalypse. Obviously, we know Apocalypse is going to be very prominent.
Yeah.
We also know he's probably going to play the big role of the big bad in this season, if you will. But I do think we're going to explore more. How do you go about altering a timeline or not altering a timeline when you kind of have one team that's probably going to be battling that moral question that's like, do we just kill him now?
Or
like
do we try to reform him?
yeah, like before he gets too bad, do we kill him now? Do we try to reform him? Do we let him follow his path that is predetermined, if you will? Because that's
Right.
kind of, isn't that the whole point of the sacred timeline, is everything's predetermined to happen
Yeah.
the same way every time? But then,
Well, not to mention, we already had an absolute point reference in season 1 in
correct.
terms of the genocide on Genosha. So
Correct.
if that's an absolute point, is Apocalypse turning into Apocalypse and, you know, creating his reign, is that also considered maybe not an absolute point, but like an absolute, like, this must happen in the course of life? Because Nathan was also raised to kind of be the downfall of Apocalypse. So like that changes Nathan's whole purpose when he's, you know, growing up, if Apocalypse does not actually take power. So it's got obviously a lot of ramifications if he does not ascend to be what we know him to be.
Well, and it is interesting because to kind of take like this massive step back, we do have, I mean, how many episodes from the 90s of this show? However, the way it was set up before was not to be giving us like an ongoing storyline. It was more so like, I'm thinking of the Phoenix storyline that only spanned 4 episodes.
Right.
Right? Like this major storyline. And I wouldn't even say like, yes, it spanned 4 episodes, but I wouldn't even say that the whole content, like all, like the 4 episodes was not even solely about the Phoenix. They're not all, you know, entirely fleshed out. So I do almost wonder what degree of the story we're going to tell too that we haven't already touched on with Apocalypse.
Right.
Don't get me wrong, there is plenty to tell. But we've seen that, like, for example, the 4 Horsemen, we've seen that come to fruition before. We've seen it.
Yeah.
It obviously was not inclusive of Gambit. That is a comic accurate, you know, storyline as well. He has a lot of horsemen. People, like, a lot of different characters play his horsemen over time. But we saw a rendition, right? So I'm kind of curious too, depending on how this plays out, what the big, I don't want to say the big battle exactly, but you know, what that culminating factor of the last maybe 8, or I'm sorry, the last episodes of like 8, 9, 10, or even 7, 8, 9, 10 really come to, because we are going to start separated. Obviously, we know our teams are going to have to come together. But the interactions and the playing with time, how does that tell a story, a different story with Apocalypse that ends in maybe another major battle, if you will, with him, or, you know, leaving us off on something that, I mean, we're expected to get supposedly season 3 now next year. It's going to be now a yearly release. So something that then leads us into a major Apocalypse season and something that's going to be bigger. So I'm kind of trying to play with that idea as well, as we're kind of sidestepping and taking that big step back of, okay, you know, we've got a whole team that is literally in ancient Egypt at the beginning of Apocalypse's, you know, life, really.
Yeah, and I'll also be curious on a couple things. One, you know, we got 10 episodes last season. We're getting 9 this season. So there's one less episode to tell this story. Did they feel like they didn't need that episode? If so, that's fine. Like, because I feel like, for example, like the Motendo half of the episode that we got with Storm and Forge, like that Storm and Forge story should have just been one episode, and the whole Motendo thing was like a weird side quest that, like, I understand, you know, Mojo we've seen in the past. It was probably like this like nice little nostalgic thing, and like I recognize that, but I could have done without that. And so are we just like cutting some of the superfluous content? Are we going to structure the episodes so that, for example, we get, I think in that episode 1, just based on the title, it's called Days of Past Future or something like that. It's like a play on Days of Future Past, which made me so nervous.
Immediate like flashbacks.
I know.
Just like PTSD response.
I know. I was like, oh no. So I don't know. Like, that to me maybe feels like we're going to get a little bit of a catch up of all 3 time periods. But then I'd be curious if then from there we have entire episodes where we're just focused on one team in one storyline. That wasn't something that they, or in one time period, that wasn't something that they really did in season 1. Like, if they were split, I think they, for example, in that final battle, we saw what the team on Asteroid M was doing. We saw what the team in Bastion's base was doing simultaneously. I don't know how they're going to kind of divide the time across literally time, but I'll be curious to kind of see how they structure that, because that'll, especially with a 3-episode, like the number 3, I guess is what I'm trying to say, keeps coming up, right? 9's divisible by 3. We've got 3 teams. We got a 3-episode start. So like, why is that number continuing to show up? Why the 3-episode premiere? I'm just curious kind of how they're going to give the airtime to the different teams. And then that's just the X-Men. We also know that we're getting X-Force, we're getting X-Corp as part of this, so X-Factor and Generation X. So there's 4 other teams beyond just the X-Men within this. So how, again, are we going to divvy up the time, tell the story of the X-Men, but then tell the story of how the mutants are coping without the X-Men living in the 90s, which we see a little bit of when you look at Forge, and his wall of like presumed dead, off-world, like when he was looking at the different kind of headshots of the well-known mutants.
I will say I'd be a little shocked if we spent an entire episode in one timeline. I should say like in one place.
Yeah.
That's just not inherently, I think, how this show is kind of set up. In my opinion, I don't think we ever have spent just one episode fully in something. I mean, even the Mojo episode is still split. Like we do focus on it at first, and then we still split it. And the whole second half has to deal with Storm. So, and I actually would argue, maybe this shows my attention span, but those are the most boring episodes. And it's not because, to me, I mean, yes, part of it is because we take the step back from like the main storyline, but I actually think it's because we don't move away from it. We don't have cuts to a different part of the story with other characters. So you're kind of just forced to sit through the Mojo stuff and just have to sit there. And I think that, to me, is what makes that the hardest to get through. So I think those are the only episodes that do it, are the ones that focus on the Storm and the Jubilee storylines. There's 2. And those, to me, are literally the only 2 that I'm like, ugh. Like, I won't lie, during my rewatch skip, I went right past it. I could not watch it barely the first time. And go back, guys. You can hear me say it. I was bored. And I said, I don't need to watch this again. We will go right past it. And that's okay. That was my personal choice on a rewatch. But I don't think we'll spend time solely in one timeline. I think there's too many moving parts. And I think, ironically, you cannot spend the entirety of a 30-minute episode in Egypt when we need to know what is happening at least in one of the other timelines in tandem at all times.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think I'm just curious kind of how they're going to handle it, because to your point, they've done episodes where you're seeing how the different storylines are almost interacting or like happening simultaneously. And I agree. I think that's the more interesting. Those are the more interesting episodes. I think, to your point, like, it gets frustrating when you're just focusing on something and that doesn't necessarily have to do with the overarching season. Like, no matter where we were last season, at some point we were in Bishop and Mr. Sinister's plot, except for, the episode with Jubilee and Storm. And I think had those episodes had cut-ins of what the other team was doing, it wouldn't feel so like draggy, almost like it was just like,
yeah, that's what I mean,
going and not really like moving. Like, it moved those characters forward, which I think is valuable, and they're great characters. But I think there's a lot of, to your point, value in pacing it so that some characters, maybe they're getting the bulk of the storyline this episode, we're focusing on them, but at the same time you're getting cut-ins to, hey, what are Jean and Scott doing in the future, or what is the team in the 90s doing, or what is the X Factor doing? How is the X-Men being gone, affecting mutants worldwide, and kind of the lack of maybe leadership, because the X-Men are so visible and so they kind of set the tone. So without that, like, what is the mutant community doing and what's the impact? You need that. To your point, you can't just focus on, what's the team doing in the past for an entire episode and just leave us kind of wondering how other things are unfolding, especially since we waited, oh my gosh, if they were to do this in the first episode, I think people would freak out. It would be worse if we only got one episode, but like, we've waited 2 years. Can you imagine then like not being able to understand what was happening in the other 2 time periods, and you're just sitting in the future
Right.
and only exploring kind of the storylines with those characters.
Well, that's what I mean. I think you can't really afford to do that in this type of show. And so, and now don't get me wrong, the only way, as you're saying with the 3-episode premiere, it's like, okay, that's the only way that you could probably get away with it. Because you're dropping all 3. You do 1, 2, 3, each in a different one. Okay, fine. But I also think it's one of those, it's one of those shows where you're like, you still only have 9, 10 episodes to a season. The first season was done and paced pretty well. I mean, obviously, like we just said, the Mojo and the Storm stuff. At the end of the day, the Storm storyline does still further the storyline of the bigger narrative, right? Like she's the one who takes the hit for Magneto, that takes her power. The whole storyline is to get her power back so that she can help her team later on, and she's still a mutant and all of that. The Jubilee one, I'm sure there's a bigger meaning. No matter what I do for the life of me,
honestly, though, even the Mojo episodes in the original series, I was like, I'm done. Like, I just, like, whenever he was the villain, I was like, I don't want to do this.
See, to me, they were fun when you had all the X-Men there, because it was kind of like this really weird side quest where they had to play these awful, like, games, and I thought they were interesting. But when it was just Jubilee and Sunspot, I'm like, but this is not interesting to me. I want to see the games. I want to see the X-Men playing them and being stuck in them and all this stuff, because I do think from like a personal emotional storyline between the X-Men, the games actually like reveal so much in the long run about like certain tensions or certain relationships and things like that, because like it kind of gives this perspective of them being watched in a way that like we as watchers are watching them.
Right.
So like
but they're like aware of it.
Yeah, you know what? It's Love Island is what it is. It is like my version of X-Men Love Island, and Mojo takes them out and is like, do challenges. And then you like get to see the fallout of the challenges. That's what it is. And so I didn't hate them, in the original. I could not stand the cutaway during, X-Men 97. That is partially why I skipped it, because I was like, I know I didn't want to watch this the first time. Like, as soon as I realized what it was the first time, I was like, oh, okay. And then it kept going. It was just Jubilee and Sunspot. And I was like, oh, okay. I'm good.
Yeah, because I like the Storm storyline. To your point, it's important. She is, like, one of the coolest characters in comics, period. Like, what a baddie. Correct. I mean, they call her a goddess, like, 6 times in the series. And I'm like, correct, yes. There's no other word. So to your point, I didn't mind that. Would I have liked some cut-ins of, like, what's going on with the team at the same time? For sure. But at least, to your point, we're furthering that storyline. That Mojo stuff, I was like, please make it stop. I just can't.
Yeah. I think that's where the Storm storyline suffered because of that.
Yeah.
So I don't anticipate us seeing that in season 2. The almost complete tear away from the current plot.
And it was like they literally created this episode. So it was like first half was called Motendo, second half was Life Death Part 1. And it was they literally like at the second half of the episode put the episode title back up. It was not even a full episode in the sense that it was 2 half episodes. And I was like, that's weird. Like I've never been on a TV, like been watching a TV show where they were like, actually, we didn't have enough to make 1 episode of Mojo, and we had 1.5 episodes of Storm. So we were going to put these together and they have nothing to do with one another. I was like, from a narrative perspective and from an organizational perspective, this bothers me. Like this drives me nuts.
I think the Mojo thing was definitely nostalgia. I'm not thinking we're going to go that direction this time around. I think, we're reestablished. We've got the show back. Those of us who have watched the show before, or those who have watched the whole of X-Men before in general, like you just all watch. Like I know I've seen it obviously when we were younger, but like I actually watched it from start to finish, before the show came out. Regardless, those who saw it, yes, cool, great callback. We've done it. Awesome. The show is back. I don't need to do it anymore. Now we're moving on to bigger, better things. And I think this is going to be a very interesting plot, because I think there's a lot going on. Not that they didn't do that last season. Let's not pretend they didn't. Prime Sentinel scared the crap out of me, first and foremost.
Goblin Queen.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Last season was so crazy, you forget Goblin Queen happened in, like, the 3rd episode.
I know.
Like, you reach a point where, like, even when I was rewatching it, I was like, dear God, I forgot even this happened. I forgot Prime Sentinels happened. Like, I was like, Oh my God, I totally like, because you just like are going about this in a completely different way. Obviously, you have Genosha and the genocide, like it happened smack dab in the middle. Like there is just so much going on, and then you're just like, holy crap.
Yeah.
So that being said, we had such a great season. We're moving into this split team. How do we get our team back together? First off, and again, I'm trying to understand what is going to be the end point. We never saw Bastion coming. So are we stupid to think that this is actually going to really truly be about Apocalypse?
I don't think so, because here's the thing. Like, Bastion was very much a hidden, like, he was hidden until basically the end. He also is not a character that I think, if I'm remembering correctly, we'd seen before. And frankly, he wasn't a character that I was familiar with. Like, I remember doing the research once he was revealed. I remember being like, who is this Bastion guy? Like, he is not on my radar at all. So he was a great villain because he was not one that the original series had even remotely touched. So I
Yeah.
thought that was a great way to kind of bring the show back. Like, you had Mr. Sinister and you had so many elements from the original show, and it was so clearly a continuation, but yet it also was like, we're back and this is a new era and this is a new villain. So that was very cool. But the thing with Apocalypse, and you were talking about this too, is like, we've seen him so many times. We saw him at the end of the season. I think that they purposefully did not include him at any point during season 1 so that he could really shine in season 2 and really be that guy. And I think, to your point, we have so much to tell. We're not just telling Apocalypse in the 90s and he's going after them. We're looking at En Sabanor in Egypt. We're looking at Apocalypse in the 90s, and we're looking at Apocalypse when he has basically fully ascended to emperor, for lack of better term, and is basically ruling the world. So I think because we're seeing 3 different versions of him, or yeah, I guess that's the best way to put it, I think there's enough to really have him kind of carry the season. Now, I mean, I guess we're going to be back in the Savage Land, it looks like, so we might have a cutaway episode here or there, but I think there's enough with him and then enough with the different time periods to have the emotional payoffs that I think we're going to see. I mean, the future stuff is going to be insane with Nathan and Jean and Scott. That's going to be crazy. But then also to see what's going to happen to everyone else. I think we're still going to have enough storyline. I think the 90s is really going to be the one that unifies everybody. I mean, they talk about bringing them back to the 90s, but if you think about it, I don't remember where Cable is at the moment, to be honest, at the end of the season. But we have one of our time travelers, at least in the 90s, in Bishop. So we know that someone who has those capabilities and has that understanding, he also is the one who's telling Forge, like, they're alive, they're just not now. He has a better understanding of what's going on. So I think that team in the 90s is really best equipped to be understanding what's happening and what that potential resolution is.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I think the base team is always going to be in the 90s because at the end of the day, that is our current storyline. Right. That is, home essentially. So, I do expect to come back to them quite a bit, and I want to because they are going to stabilize us in the other 2 stories overall. I think there's plenty of content to go off with Apocalypse. I think my bigger thing is they could have gone simple and said, Mr. Sinister is the obvious answer in season 1 of everything going on. They could have said the Prime Sentinels were Mr. Sinister. In fact, they imply it in like episode 6, I think, towards the end. Like, that's the implication, is that, oh, it's Mr. Sinister. And he's kind of that red herring because then by the time we're watching episode 7, it's like, oh, actually, there's someone else playing this game. Right. There's someone bigger than Mr. Sinister. And that's why I almost wonder just a little bit, though, or if we're gonna kind of get something pulled back on us, because it's obvious what has been set up in front of us. And that's why I'm so stressed about saying the whole thing with the Horseman and Gambit, because to me, I'm like, it's right there. Right. But I'm also like, it's right there. The same way Mr. Sinister was so obviously the answer, the way they set up the entire season, until suddenly it wasn't. And so I do kind of wonder if we're gonna have a little bit of a trick played on us again.
I mean, I think that's valid. I guess I'm just trying to think like who, if you're thinking about villains who are involved in time travel, because I think really the theme here, beyond the emotional growth and things like that we always see in this show, which is so good at, is the through line is going to be time travel. So if we're going to have someone that's bigger than Apocalypse, the question is who also kind of has their pulse on time travel. And that's the part where I'm like, I don't know of anyone that scares me more than Apocalypse. This is true. This is valid.
Here's the other thing I'm gonna say. When I kind of said this earlier, but when we might not get full-fledged Apocalypse in this season, this could be what we move towards in season 3. But we kind of end almost on, I don't want to say cliffhanger, but almost on a cliffhanger, preparing for something bigger with Apocalypse, and instead we have somebody, playing the cards, if you will, to get him where he needs to be to play that bigger story. Because we've had that happen before, not just in X-Men, like in plenty of other stories where Zemo's the best example. He's playing with the puppets. He's moving people around the way he needs to move them. And at the end of the day, Zemo himself is, not to be this, like say it this way, but he's nothing. Obviously, he's a mastermind. He's played the game, but he has nothing at the core. I mean, if Bucky wanted to tear his head off, he could have. Plenty of our heroes could have. So it all comes down to me about wondering, is there somebody playing the game a little bit, playing to get Apocalypse where they need to be? Because I just, not to be like, I'm concerned about timing. That's not the point. That I'm not concerned about timing. I think the show can do nothing wrong. It's perfection, and everything about it is perfection.
Of course.
But, and also they've known how, obviously these aren't the same people who inherently wrote the first show, but like they've taken their notes, they've done their homework, unlike some of the other writers that have existed in phases 4 through 6. Like they know what they're doing.
There's a lot of respect for the original, and that's so evident. Yeah.
And for me, that's why I sit back and I'm like, I feel safe. So it's not about the timing, but I do wonder, with our heroes so scattered, and because we have these 3 Apocalypse timelines, if we kind of are more so setting up to give him a bigger platform a little later.
I mean, that's entirely possible. I mean, Apocalypse is such a big foe because he does have so much of this this may be a hot take, but like he reminds me of Kang, but like Kang from the comics.
Yeah.
In that he's so ubiquitous across time that he seems almost inevitable. And so like it was like watching it back and like knowing where season 1 ends, it was kind of interesting to be like, I can't believe they never put Apocalypse in one of these episodes, right? He's so iconic. He's like Mr. Sinister in the sense that like he shot like, whoa, I just combined a bunch of words there. Popped up and showed up all came out of my mouth at the same time. He pops up every few episodes with a new plot and a new, way to try to throw a wrench in the X-Men and their lives. But I think this time the scale feels bigger. Like there was one other plot line from the original series that I remember that being like, holy crap, like this is insane. It's the one where it takes all the telepaths one.
Yeah, I was gonna say it was the Apocalypse timeline.
Yeah
or
and so
episode,
like
sorry.
Yeah, and that I remember when I was prepping for the original or season 1, watching the original, being like, that's a crazy plot line. Like that's insane.
Yeah.
But I think that they've found a way to take that level of kind of gravitas and almost blow it out to be even bigger. And I'm excited to see that because I think he is such an interesting character. I know he's one that a lot of people were really disappointed or how he was portrayed in the live action because so many problems. But I think he's a character that because of like the comics and the animated shows, he has so much to him, and I am excited for them to explore that this season. I kind of hope that they don't do 2 seasons dedicated to Apocalypse. They have so many other storylines. I mean, I know they're probably going to save House of M for live action, but like those storylines, they have like the Krakoa storylines now that obviously we saw what happened with
Hot
Genosha.
take.
Like,
I don't know if they'll do that though. I don't know if they'll leave it for live action.
I think they will. I don't think
here's
the
the
first
thing.
time we're going to see House of M is in
I do.
animation. I just don't.
I do.
I don't.
Here's the thing. I think we've talked about this before about this show. It is like the best little homework assignment ever.
Oh, for sure.
Especially when it becomes the fact that we will be having the mutants in live action.
Yes.
Because if you don't want to have to do your research, if you don't want to have to read the comics or even read like the summaries on Marvel, .com or Marvel Wikipedia and all those things, which, I get it. Not everybody does. And some people don't learn that way. Like that's just not how
There's
they
also
retain
just, like,
information.
60 or 70 years worth of storytelling. Like it's
Right.
so
It's a lot.
daunting. Yeah.
And comics of themselves are a lot to like even start. I mean, the ones I have read, I'm like, what is happening? Because then
Yeah.
the next issue, you're like, what is happening now in this one? Even though this is the next one. Like,
right.
It doesn't.
But they were on some side quest in a different comic that now
Yeah.
is like completely affecting their story. And like,
and you're
it's a whole
like,
thing.
okay, but I didn't read that one. So now I'm not like next thing you know, this like one small storyline you were trying to read is like 7 more. And you're just like, I don't understand.
Now
and
I
it's just,
have
like,
so many comic books.
No, and they're just like multiplying. So those 7 are now like 21, and you're like, I'm overwhelmed. So obviously, I get it. I understand. I do feel like X-Men has always been, or like the animated show has always been, this amazing ability to just be like, here's a summary. Here's this little like bit about how this actually plays out. We don't have the ability to do it on the big screen right now or whatever. So here you go. They have done so many iconic storylines already in both the original and even now. Like, I mean, as we're moving into the Apocalypse storyline, we've actually seen Apocalypse in live action. Not well. Horrible, actually. We don't talk about it.
Yes.
But
I'm sorry, Oscar Isaac. We love you as Moon Knight, but Apocalypse was not it, my friend.
Stay in your lane. Stay as Moon Knight only. Like, no. But, we've seen it happen. It's been touched on. That doesn't mean that we've told all the stories. I think House of M, to me, and guys, we know I hold this so close and dear to my heart. Like, this is like one of those storylines that like, I'm right there with Lizzie. Like, I'm just waiting. Yeah. I'm just waiting for it.
The girl has to utter the words, no more mutants. And I mean, I think we'd all pass out.
Well, here's the thing. I'll never see Winter Widow happen. I've come to terms with that. That was always like here for me. House of M is like also right there for me, and we have the potential for it. So I'm just like putting all my eggs in that basket. But I do think to be able to do it to a certain scale, you could do it in animation that you can't maybe inherently do without waiting 5 years to do it in live action. I don't think if we did it like in season 4, it'd be a problem if we had a live action 4 years after that and they do it in a bigger, different way. But I don't always think some of the ways in which that it's done in the comics is transferable to the big screen. You don't really have that same issue in animation. I
hear your argument. I think it's valid. There are things you can do in that medium that are simply virtually impossible with real people. At the same time, if you think about some of the timelines that have been adapted, whether they were in animation or in live action, I mean, we've done the Phoenix Saga between live action and animation at least 3 times that I can think of off the top of my head.
And they're all done so differently, which is why I don't think it would matter.
And only 2 of them were actually valid. I'm so sorry, Sophie Turner. You seem like a lovely lady, but that was tragic. Yeah. Anyway, my point is some of the most iconic pieces have already been done, both in live action and animation. So like House of M is like one of those storylines that is like so iconic when it comes to the mutants, and it hasn't been done. And I can just see Kevin being like, we're going to gobble that up and we're going to like, don't touch that. That one's ours. That's one of the few that we get to do the first time as the MCU, instead of being like, let me correct what the Fox universe really bungled the first time. And now only the second one was bungled for the Phoenix Saga, but
I mean, I don't inherently disagree, but I do think where we are in the MCU, we are just not close enough to it that I don't think it would be an issue to see it kind of put out as a homework assignment. We get a 4-episode event in, season 4 of X-Men 97. We don't see live action for another 5 years after that anyway. Like, I just think, unfortunately, like, if I felt confident and which we won't, because why would we get House of M early on in the mutant saga when we just met
mature,
mutants? But that's my point. Yeah. So knowing that I would probably still be waiting another 8 years to see House of M happen, I don't think it really matters if it's happening in the animation, especially because I think with the way they set up, saying that like these are all their own different storylines and things of that nature, like X-Men 97 lives in its own little universe for us that I think at the end of the day, let it do its thing. And that's fine with me. I would also like to see the capacity of it being done to like full-fledged accuracy in an actually like already put together mutant universe, which we have with X-Men 97.
Valid argument. I mean, I'm not going to say you're wrong. There's something about that one not having been done at all yet that like
it's just too big of a scale, in my opinion, to that. If it was something I could see us doing early in the mutant saga, I would say differently, I think. But knowing we'll still have to wait so long for it, I don't know. I just don't feel like in my gut they're going to sit on it. And also, I'm going to play like this trump card with Lizzie. I think you need to give us some crumbs, because Lizzie's only going to probably want to be involved in this for only so much longer, because she's literally having a child and starting a family, and she's talked a lot about
her second. I don't think this is her first kid, is it?
I believe it is.
Oh, I thought she already had a child.
Do not think she did. She only recently got married.
Well, I just learned the other day that Anne Hathaway has kids, so like
that's fair. I didn't know that either. I was like, wow, she's having her first child, and they're like her third. I was like,
I know. I'm just like, right. I assume unless I see them, like unless they're like the Affleck children who I've feel like we've all watched
pregnant
grow up. I'm like, okay.
I feel this is the first time I've ever watched her actually like be pregnant, but maybe I'm just like not aware. I don't know. But either way, not important. I just know that with some remarks from Lizzie, she's kind of in that similar boat to me that Tom's in. And when I'm hearing that and knowing a story like House of M, even though I know she's passionate about it, is so far away, I think there needs to be a little something in the meantime to be like, we are aware that this is a storyline everybody's waiting for. Because also everybody wants X-Men versus Avengers. Well, not that I don't, but to me, those are two separate like saga ending events.
I don't remember how they relate to each other, to be honest. Like,
but that's my point. I don't think they relate enough to each other to me that they would be a Doomsday Secret War situation or an Infinity War endgame situation. Yes,
but at the same time, like life goes on after House of M.
I understand that, but to me, House of M is like the Infinity War snap. When she mutters those like infamous words, that's that moment. An Avengers versus X-Men is also a major battle. Like, I don't expect to see that like a Civil War. No.
Right.
But that's my point. So when you're kind of putting those up against each other, that's the other question. We haven't seen either of those in our animated show either.
Yeah. Well, the other thing, and this is the last thing I'll say before, so we can get back to actually X-Men 97, what we think is going to happen to season 2, but this is such a fun little aside. The last thing I'll say is, in terms of live action, we don't know what the soft reboot's going to look like. So I just want to say, like, I don't know that they'll do this, but they could cheat it and basically start the universe in a place where we have mutants much more than we've uttered the word a couple times. We know there are mutants in 616. We have a few confirmed ones, but if they choose to soft reboot the universe in a way where we are further down the timeline, then, we might be able to cheat a few years and maybe be closer to a House of M.
We just kind of have to figure out how you bring the Scarlet Witch into all of that, because one, as far as the studio has pretended so far, she's dead, and two, has no connection to her supposed father. And even though they've retconned that, I'm aware, I ignore that retcon in the comics.
It's dumb.
it doesn't matter. The House of M storyline, she still thinks even if you do, like, she still thinks that Magneto is her father. Plus, her brother plays a very prominent part.
Again, soft reboot, we can fix all of these things.
I'm getting stressed.
I'm using the soft reboot as a fix for all of the things that they have kind of like messed up. Like killing Pietro was tragic. That was like the dumbest choice that they've ever made. They painted there's been actually some other dumb choices, but that was
getting stressed.
Really like top tier dumb choice. They painted themselves into a corner. Soft reboot. Like that's the answer.
I understand. I'm just getting this is overwhelming me and stressing me out.
All right, back to season 1 or season 2. Season 2.
Yep.
Okay, so we've talked about our friends in Egypt. We know that they're going to be, we don't know, but we're hypothesizing that they're going to be potentially dealing with the moral quandary of how do we deal with apocalypse? Do we rehabilitate? Do we do nothing? Do we end it here and now? We know the 90s.
Magneto, they're going to be besties.
We think the 90s are going to be kind of our home base. That's where everybody's going to return. We do know that they reunify. We've seen footage of that in the trailers. I also think, and we've touched on this, it's going to be really interesting to see the 90s without the X-Men, to understand the true impact of what that team does and what they mean to the mutant community, I think is going to be really cool. Watching other teams try to step in to fill that void that they leave, I think is going to be just fascinating storytelling. But then we have the folks in the future.
Yeah.
A really fun quasi-family reunion. I am a little confused. I mean, I obviously know that Jean is not Cable's mom.
Right.
But I swear to you, he called her mom in the last episode. So he seems to be like coming to terms with the fact that like though she didn't give birth to him, she like has memories of giving birth to him.
That doesn't make sense to me though. Like she shouldn't.
Well, their like psyches were like linked. That's what she like explained. She was like, I know I didn't carry him, but like I have memories of him kicking. Like
that never made sense to me. And not to like pull that apart now, but that never made sense to me because I was like, it made sense that the clone had all of the. Sorry, Madeline. It made sense that Madeline had all the all the background information for Jean and being Jean because he could do that. But like all of her memories should not have ever been Jean's, and that doesn't make sense to me.
But like. No, I totally agree. That when I was like rewatching the show, I was like, okay, am I dumb?
That's why I felt the same way because I'm sitting there. She's like, I'm trying to sort through what's real and what isn't. I'm like, see, like now to me, Madeline should have to go through that, but I don't understand why you're going through that because I would have thought your brain just stopped. Like,
right.
But yeah,
she was like
your memories
comatose, like you wouldn't have additional memories, right? Like, no, I totally agree because I was also like, what do you mean you can't tell when you were switched? Where do your memories stop, girl? Like,
I think we had an entire debate over this during the coverage of season 1 now, and now rewatching it, I can confidently say now I realize that her memories didn't stop. But that whole up until rewatching it, I thought her memories had stopped, so I didn't understand why she wasn't she couldn't put her memories together.
I don't know. All I know is that was confusing to me. I don't really understand the relationship he has with Jean because technically she's not his mom. Like,
but Madeline, like literally biologically, she is.
She like is. And then she also has the memories. But like also Madeline's body was the one who carried him. So it's like I don't understand. And then Bastion kept being like, your clone mother. And I was like, yeah, his mom's the clone, so what? But then also he kept calling Jean his mom. And I was like, everybody's sending me mixed signals and I'm really confused.
Cable is self-actualized though at this point that I think maybe he just came to terms with but he had such issue with Jean in the first season.
Right. Like so it's not her fault she was cloned. Like she didn't try to do this.
I don't know.
Unfortunately, her coming made your mom leave and like go to Genosha. And like, oh, I'm not gonna lie though, the scene where he tries to save her, I was like, I just kept going, he was just trying to save his mom.
The second that she was not shot, but hit with that thing, it's him, obviously. And that's his way of getting her outside to try and warn her and stuff. I literally was like, oh God, this is when it all just goes downhill.
I know.
And okay, not to laugh, but I was kind of chuckling because when obviously Cyclops is like hoping that they find Madeline instead of it ends up being Emma. And he's like obviously upset, but I'm like, bestie, like she was literally standing there when the blast like came and shot. Like I'm pretty sure her body was exactly where it landed.
Yeah,
Like,
I don't think that there's anything left to find of Madeline, unfortunately.
she didn't live, I fear. Yeah.
Super unfortunate. That
Yeah.
storyline, I was like, so good. This is so good. It's confusing, but it's so good. Like I'm so invested.
Correct.
Speaking of, I am now super invested in their storyline in the future because now they're going to have the chance to have an opportunity to raise Nathan in a way that, you know, they didn't think they would, which I think is going to be really interesting to kind of see that dynamic play out and watch them as a family. Like one of my favorite scenes in season 1 is when they're in the Porsche and Cable's like, yo, you have a Porsche? And Scott's like zooming. And then he's like, nobody messes with the Summerses. And I was like, wait, this is actually so cool. So we're going to get that, I think, vibes wise, but like with teenage Nathan. And so I kind of like that. I'm excited to see like them. I'm excited to see what Clan Ascani brings. Like we mentioned, they're like big on time travel. So I'll be curious kind of how that conversation is had and how they talk about time travel, how that might be different than Bishop and things like that, and how it compares to the wider MCU because everybody does it a little differently. So that's I think one of the time periods that I'm most excited to see because I love that whole Summers family soap opera. I just find it endlessly entertaining.
I want to say something you're gonna hate.
Oh no. Does that have to do with time travel? Because it's usually where things start for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, great.
I kind of want to know how it's going to play into the bigger MCU as a whole. Because this show, for the most part, has been pretty removed. Yeah, I see the face you're making already. The show itself has been pretty removed, but then it makes comments, right? Like, we have characters that... we had the Watcher, right? Like, things are still involved. And the reason I bring that up is...
Wait, remind me when the Watcher was?
That was Genosha. You see him in the sky.
Oh, I missed
that's
that.
How you, dude, that's how you know it's the absolute point. Because he's there. He's watching
says it.
Well,
that's how I knew it was an absolute point. When someone point blank said Genosha is probably an absolute point.
Well, the Watcher appears. He appears just like, you know, you see him. We saw him appear in Daredevil this past season. Like, we see him in the stars, right? So we have overlap, and that's not the only one. Obviously, we have others that are like other things that overlap into MCU related projects. It's vague, but it's there. My question is we don't have, I don't know if it's a question more than a general statement of like maybe talk to it. We don't have a sacred timeline anymore the way we used to.
Right.
And the way this show has always, to my understanding of it, followed that was we have different time periods that all do like have like when Bishop talks, he's like, I've seen a lot of futures. They're all, you know, I've never seen like this one and things like that. But he never really talks about universes. It's never talked to, and we, this goes back to our age old debate of like the timeline versus universe. I understand that. But
yeah,
I just am trying, I guess, not that we didn't necessarily have the timeline falling apart, like the sacred timeline falling apart by the time the show came out. But if you think about when it was being created, we didn't, it was being created during the midst of the timeline falling apart. So it's like, is that a factor? I guess is like the overarching question.
I'm going to bring out some lore here. And I don't want to have to bring this up, but it's a wrinkle that has sat with me for many years since we replayed this movie. The Ancient One brings up, I know, but you knew that's where I was going.
No, I knew where it was going. I just like dreaded it.
The Ancient One brings up the multiverse in the first Doctor Strange, which Market came out in 2016. Baby. Yes, thank you. So here's what I think. It's hard because like the original show also came out in the 90s, which was like pre-MCU, pre all of this stuff. So they were not necessarily worried about how it was going to relate to like 30 other films later down the road. But now you have to squeeze it all in, right? And if I had to say, here's my round peg, square hole moment, I think that the multiverse has always existed. And I think that works with how we've seen the TVA, right? They're pruning. I don't know that they were always pruning to the effectiveness they thought they were, because we know that the X-Men have had multiple timelines. I mean, if you just think about even like the live action, the way that they kind of combined timelines and that whole weird shenanigans that they were doing with like the OG cast and then the new cast. The other thing to think about here is like the way that they talk about time, and I think I'm about to contradict myself, so apologies in advance, but the way that they talk about time in X-Men 97 and the original series is like the things that the X-Men do affect Bishop's future. Like Bishop comes back to be like, you have to do this because like this affects the future and this creates this horrible thing, or like you can't do this or you must do that. And he's kind of like, and Cable does it too, they kind of come back to dictate certain things must or must not happen. Well, that's less about, to me, a sacred timeline with branches and more about a butterfly effect that we were told does not exist. Now, as I said, this show came out pre-MCU. The fact that the MCU chose to go, I mean, I get why they chose to go the multiversal route, because like if you're doing a butterfly effect then there's only ever going to be one timeline, it's just constantly changing. So I get it, like truly. But that's not how the X-Men universe has talked about it in animation. So I said I was going to make it all work, and I realized halfway through that I couldn't, because they actually directly contradict one another. So I think what Bishop is trying to say when you're saying I've seen many futures and there wasn't this, is like he talks about how the future is constantly changing. So I think for them, they're contained within one universe, right? Like if we are looking at the X-Men animated universe as a whole, what's happening in Egypt, for example, in whatever year that's happening, what's happening in the 90s and what's happening in the year 3000 something or another is all happening at the same time, but they're all affecting one another, which is, well, anything that's happening before is like affecting the ones in the future, which is makes it extremely confusing. But they're not necessarily creating new universes, because that's never how the show has approached it. They're all just living on one timeline. How that affects like the sacred timeline, which is supposedly 616, I guess they're just technically a branch. Like when Loki grabbed the branches of Yggdrasil, like they're just one branch, and they are just continually like rewriting the future. Why their rules are different than everybody else's, that is for writers who are smarter than me to explain. But that's just how I'm like trying to basically fit one theory under a contradicting theory so that they both work.
No, I don't think it doesn't work, because I think, again, that this is that age-old question that we have on this podcast, which is timeline versus multiverse, or like universe.
Right.
What is the difference? And I actually think you in and of itself, now I'm sure you could find something, and I'm sure somebody could, that is going to contradict this. But by saying all of that, theoretically, we could say each branch works the way the X-Men universe does. They're just their own branches. Let's just play off that. And then like certain moments create another branch. We could play that game if we wanted and say really all the universes follow that rule. It's just like certain crazy moments don't just affect the like when something that really isn't supposed to happen happens, it doesn't just affect the future.
Like a gauge is like, is it in the yellow zone? Yellow zone, like green zone means everything's going. Yellow zone
means like the future's getting messed up further down the line and we need to fix that. But red zone means no, this is such a catastrophic change to this timeline that it actually creates an entire other timeline.
Like I kind of feel like red zone is like if an absolute point doesn't happen. Like if for some reason Cable was able, he said he went back, like 200 times. If on the 201st try, which would be tragic, mind you, if on the 201st try, Cable goes back and says, I fixed Genosha and it didn't happen and I was able to stop that. Like to me, then we're looking at a totally different timeline, because Genosha continues to exist. It continues to be a part of the UN. The idea of mutant acceptance, continues. I mean, I'm sure Bastion
the overall effects of what happens doesn't. I mean, Genosha is that breaking point for many mutants,
right? And I'm sure that crazy mic drop that Bastion does when he reveals that Professor X is actually still alive. That definitely will still have some ramifications for sure. But those sequence of events happening in such short order is really what lays that groundwork for everything that happens after. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I guess maybe it is that like now we've seen dumber things, and I say that with love, but like I should say it this way. We've seen smaller things create other universes.
Yeah.
So that's like, it's kind of hard. But like
It
in my
is,
head,
but
if
there's
I wanted
no way to make sense
work,
of it otherwise.
right?
So,
like if I wanted to say you're being contradictory and this is how you can make it all fit, that's how I would make it fit. That's not how they've chosen to make it fit because it doesn't. Like that's the part where it's like they should have had, and I have been on this soapbox for well, no, they were back in 2021. So I've been on this soapbox for 5 years now. They should have had a meeting early on run by Kevin that said, this is how the multiverse works. You can explain it however you feel you want to explain it in the context of your show. But this is at its core how it functions. You must work within these rules. They chose not to do that. And now we have 6 different rules in 6 different properties. This show gets a pass because it predates everything in the MCU. But everything else, unhelpful.
Well, that's why I think it's kind of like trying to understand if there will be that effect of the fact that we do have an open multiverse available or not. And now listen, again, I enjoy a lot of the show because we can avoid that. However, I'm being fed so much information about multiverses and timelines that when you watch a show that's going to deal with at least time travel, it's kind of hard for those thoughts not to bleed in. Just subconsciously, let alone if they address it. So that's kind of why I just wanted to see your thoughts on that, because it's like we might have that be affected by the fact that, like, think about the group we have in the future and how they're trying to protect the sacred timeline versus the one in the past has a great chance of absolutely effing up the entire sacred timeline, for lack of better words. Like, truly, that's kind of like what I'm seeing in the scales. And then you have the 90s right smack dab in the middle of it. So when you kind of have that as what I'm kind of thinking is going to be such a big backbone of this season, it does make me like have flashbacks, I guess. I don't know. Like I'm kind of just thinking about it. I'm like, okay, so does this play then into those bigger conversations we have in like Loki and some of those other shows and movies?
Yeah, I mean, look, here's how I'm choosing to think about it, just because it makes it easier for me and because otherwise I get a headache and I can already feel one coming on. Is this is just one branch of many. Like, and I think it was Brad Winderbaum, I don't know, somebody at Marvel basically was like, how are you going to balance the fact that you have, X-Men 97 that's doing so well and you have, such fan enthusiasm behind that, and you're moving into live action, like you're gonna bring these characters, a lot of them, to life. And he was like, I don't understand why we can't just have both. So to me, it's just they're 2 different universes, the same way that what we saw in What If, those were different universes than the universe that we've seen in live action, or the same way that oh my gosh, why am I blanking on her name right now? Monica, moved across universes. Like they're all existing at the same time because we know, Beast exists in that universe. So there's X-Men in that universe. We now have seen, and there's the Fox folks, like we've now seen multiple universes with the X-Men. So I'm just choosing to believe this is just one of many branches. We just haven't had the mutants to this extent in 616 yet. We're bringing them in. Just not sure how this soft, to wrap it all together, not sure how the soft reboot's going to do it, but that's what's going to happen. And then, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, as long as we're staying at this caliber of storytelling, this show could go on for the next 15 years and I'll be happy.
I agree. Yeah. I'm fine with that.
I mean, it's so good. The way that I was just like so happy when I was watching this, I was like, this one really holds up. Like sometimes you watch something, you're like, this is so good. And you like watch it a second time, you're like, it was definitely still good. But like, I remember this being way better. I was like, wait, this was even better than I remember. Like, how did that happen?
For real.
Despite the fact that this season is unfortunately potentially dealing with time travel, I'm still really excited. Despite the bane of my existence being a central backbone to the storyline, and that's gotta tell you something. Yeah, but it's
not the first time with this show.
No, but they didn't really do it a lot in season 1.
No, but the actual like original part of the show actually did do it a good bit enough for me that I'm like, it's fine.
I know. I really loved season 1. So I'm very nervous. I know I'm not nervous. I'm optimistic with like a splash of caution because I really don't like time travel as a storytelling mechanism. And Marvel did that to me. Like the MCU live action, that's the reason I feel that way. That and The Flash, which like was the original crack in the shell. But like other than that, I'm open to it. It's fine. I'm trying to hype myself up. I mean, I'm very hyped, but I'm trying to hype myself up about the time travel portion.
I'm chilling. I feel fine.
Yeah, well, one of us gets time travel induced migraines, so
I have full trust in everything that's to come. And honestly, we've seen it enough in the show. I'm really not worried.
I think this show will be the best version of time travel that we will have seen. For sure.
We've seen it already.
Yeah. So it'll be fine. Anyway, we're excited about X-Men 97 Season 2. We'll be actually covering the show itself next week when the first 3 episodes drop. So make sure you drop 1, 2, and 3. We'll have 1 episode covering all 3 episodes. We'll do a spoiler warning at the end or the beginning. We'll do a spoiler warning in the show notes. So you'll remember to watch before you listen to us, but that's coming next week. Make sure that you're following on your podcast platform of choice. And also, you can check out our website and our Buy Me a Coffee, both of which are linked in the show notes below.
You guys can also give us a follow on all of our socials, which are also linked in the show notes down below. And we're pretty excited for X-Men 97 Season 2, if you couldn't tell. It is coming out next week already, believe it or not. And it is past 3 episodes all at once, a weekly release beyond that. So get ready for the next couple weeks. It's going to be all X-Men 97 related with like a blip of Spider-Man in there.
Oh, yeah.
How could I forget?
They're doing all the photo calls.
Yeah, so get ready. A lot of good content coming your way. And as always, Marvel just blew your mind. So let's talk about it.